We are so glad that everyone is with us today. I'm Megan Cole, and I'm representing Travel and Tourism Research Association, or TTRA, and we hope you all enjoy today's webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. We will answer them at the end of the presentation. We are so excited to learn from you all. As you can tell, it's also being recorded, and you will receive a link post-webinar as well. I'm very pleased to introduce Miha Gallagher, Vice President of Brand at Future Partners, as she discusses with us today the state of the US brand, what global travelers really think and what it means for destinations. So thank you so much, Miha.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Megan, and welcome everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's presentation. And welcome to the key findings of the 2026 edition of the State of the International Traveler, which is Future Partners' tracking study of international travelers in 16 of the world's top global tourism markets. This may be one of the most consequential years for US international travel in the past decade, save for COVID. But at a time when global demand for travel remains relatively strong, perceptions of the US are evolving, reshaping how international travelers evaluate the US as a destination within an increasingly competitive landscape, making it more important than ever to understand how international travelers are thinking, feeling, and choosing. And these important insights into global travelers are brought to you by our devoted team of tourism researchers at Future Partners, who are committed to unlocking you boundless opportunities powered by insight, shaping strategies for tourism leaders that win you hearts, minds, and market share, and brings the future of travel within reach for our industry. And right now, the world feels louder and more divided. Politics and algorithms are pulling people into different realities, and that's creating more types of travelers with different needs and expectations. And to stay competitive, it's not enough to know what people are doing. You have to understand the why. And our study of global travelers does just that so we can better understand the underlying motivations and desires of this high spending audience. Now, today I'll start with findings on global traveler sentiment. We'll then explore shifting US perceptions, and then a look ahead to upcoming mega events that are being hosted within the US. We'll then end the presentation today with important travel trends and important information relevant to marketing to international travelers. Now, before I begin, here's an overview of the methodology used to execute the State of the International Traveler. It's an online survey methodology that screens for those likely to travel outside their home country in the next 3 years. We collect and analyze nearly 13,000 completed surveys each year from a random sample of these likely international travelers from each of the 16 top feeder markets to the US across Asia, South Pacific, Europe, North America, and Latin America. The individual markets are listed for you on the right side of your screen. And the State of the International Traveler Study has been conducted every year since 2014, which provides a rich historic data set to examine trends. And this edition's survey was fielded at the top of this year, January 5th through the 15th of 2026. And the full study findings with extensive details and breakouts by market is available now in both report and dashboard format. And this year, we introduced quarterly pulses to get really timely updates to key sentiment metrics since so much is happening on the global stage right now. And the results from our Q1 pulse will be available in June. So stay tuned for that. In that pulse survey, we examined the effects of the Iran war and how that may be weighing on global traveler decision making. So, again, stay tuned for our release of that information in June. Now, for this presentation, what you'll take away from today's insights is this. Amidst an already challenging global travel sentiment circumstance, international interest in visiting the US has declined sharply this year. I don't think that comes as any surprise to anyone in the room. Um, but with sentiment cooling across nearly every major inbound market, largely driven by policy shifts and perceptions of political and social instability. It's really It's really weighing heavy on travel intent. However, the enduring appeal of the American travel experience and the US's continued position as a top desired destination in many markets makes clear that this is not a moment to retreat, but to invest strategically and communicate with intention and compete even harder for international travelers. Now, to set the stage for how the US brand is performing now, let's first take a quick look back 10 years ago to 2026, where in that year's survey, we found that nearly half, 46.3% of likely global travelers surveyed, said that they were very likely or certain to visit the US in the next 2 years. And the US was ranked first as the most desired destination in 9 markets, second in 3 markets, and third in another. And to the more recent past, global tourism showed its strength in 2025, hitting 1.52 billion arrivals last year. So, moving to the present, let's look at global travel sentiment right now. Now, the chart you're seeing maps the percent expecting to take more international trips as well as spend more on those international trips across the markets that we studied between 2014 and now. And the headline here is that global travelers' trip volume and spending expectations have dropped in 2026, reflecting a period of economic and political upheaval that has disrupted the post pandemic recovery. Now, after rebounding in 2025, travel expectations took a downward turn this year, suggesting that global travel sentiment continues to be in flux after the years of relative stability prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, a stability that has not yet returned after the initial recovery demonstrated in the 2021-2022 revenge travel era. Now, international travel as a personal budget priority has also declined. This chart is showing the percent of international travelers rating international leisure travel as a high or an extremely high budget priority from 2014 to now. And the share of global travelers who said international travel is a high spending priority for them, that's dropped 8.6 percentage points to exactly where it was back in 2024 at 39.3%. And among the individual markets, only India reported a majority, and that was 62.1%, who said that international travel would be a high budget priority for them this year. And time and budget for international travel has constricted for most markets, though spending projections have grown for China. When asked the number of days they have available for international leisure travel, is shown on the chart on the left, international travelers in South Korea and Japan continue to have the fewest number of days and are the only 2 markets this year with less than 2 weeks available. In contrast, the Netherlands, Australia, Spain, and the UK are the markets with the greatest number of days available for international trips. And reflecting the general downturn in spending expectations and budget prioritization of international travel, the amount of money available for international leisure travel this year, when adjusted for exchange rates, has decreased across all markets, as shown on the chart on right, except for China, whose global travel budgets climbed 12.1 percentage points year over year. Now, with global sentiment what it is, let's look at shifting perceptions of the US specifically and how these may impact the outlook for international visitation this year and beyond. Now, the US remains the most top of mind global destination, but among a record low share of global travelers. The chart you're seeing on screen here is showing the percent of global travelers writing in the US and its top 4 competitors to an open ended question about the international destinations that they most want to visit in the coming year. And again, this is trended historically from 2014 to now. And the US is the darkest blue line on top. And while the US continues to rank first as the most mentioned in an unaided question as a desired international destination among the aggregate markets at study, this did decrease sharply from 35% in 2025 to 28.1% this year. And again, that's the lowest share on record and the largest drop historically reported for the US in this particular metric. Now, the top five, the other four, rather, top mentioned international destinations do remain the same. That is Spain, Italy, France, and Japan. So, those are the markets that are most competitive to the US in attracting global audiences right now. Now, despite record declines, the US retains its top position in seven key markets. This table is showing the percent writing in the US on a country level, and the US rank and its change year over year. So, the US was the most mentioned desired international destination, as I mentioned, for seven of the 16 markets that we study, despite a notable decline in a share of mentions year over year. The US still remains most mentioned international desired destination for Mexico, Brazil, Japan, Colombia, India, Canada, and China. Notably, though, despite the largest year over year percentage point drops, Canadians were still most likely to write in the US as one of their top three desired destinations to visit in the next 12 months. And amongst a closed list of competitors where we tested the US against a select set of destinations, the US remains the top desired destination overall. It is statistically tied with Italy. But when we look at this in a historical context, of course, the US has lost significant ground. As shown on the chart on the left, while the US remains a top desired international destination, its relative position among the competitor set of the world's top desired global destinations, it has weakened, dropping 10.1 percentage points to 25.2%. And again, it's now statistically tied with Italy. Now, among the individual markets shown on the table at right, the US continues to perform best with Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia, but it should be noted that the US posted decrease year over year across all markets. And this chart is showing the percent of global travelers saying that they are likely, unlikely, or will not visit the US in the next 2 years from 2018 till now. And global travelers' likelihood to visit the US, shown in the dark blue bar, that has dropped to a record low, while outright refusal to visit, shown in the red line, has nearly tripled. Let's now look at what is deterring global travelers from choosing the US. Now, while cost remains the top deterrent, political discomfort, social concerns, and unwelcoming perceptions surge as key barriers to visiting the US. When asked to share their top reasons for why they don't visit this country more frequently, as this chart is showing in the dark blue bars, significant increases were reported for, quote, I am uncomfortable with the US's national politics. That's up 10.2 points. And I do not feel welcome in the US. That is up 8.5 points year over year. Now, perceptions of feeling unwelcome in the US went from the 19th most selected deterrent in 2025 to now the 10th place. Additionally, concerns about gun violence in the US, which has historically been a top barrier, that has also moved up from third place to now second place in 2026. And given international travelers' concerns with US politics, this year's edition of the State of the International Traveler included several questions around the impact of recent US policy proposals that affect inbound travelers. So, headlines that you surely haven't missed include a visa integrity fee, new fees for foreign visitors to national parks, and requirements to show 5 years of social media history to enter the US. And the findings suggest that these administrative or operational changes are materially influencing international travelers' choice to visit. Starting with the visa integrity fee, as shown, the percent who agree on the chart on left that the $250 visa integrity fee it absolutely dampens US travel intent in key growth markets. Now, among non visa waiver countries, a clear majority, that's 57.5%, agree that the new visa integrity fee is actively reducing their willingness to travel to the US. And as shown on the chart at right, agreement with the sentiment was highest amongst international travelers in India, Brazil, and China. And moving on to the new national park fees for foreign visitors, or the proposed new fees, that is, we see that the that this potential policy change notably suppresses interest in visiting the US. As shown in the chart at left, 43.1% of global travelers surveyed said this policy makes them less or much less interested in visiting the US as a whole. And as shown in the chart at right, the share of travelers who said that this would make them less interested in visiting our country, that's highest at a majority for travelers in the Netherlands, Australia, Canada, and Spain. And the proposed social media screening policy is also dampening interest in the US, with strongest effects in Western markets. Over a third of international travelers said that they would be less interested in visiting the US due to this policy change. Among the individual markets, most respondents from the Netherlands, Australia, and Canada said this makes them less interested in visiting the US. And while enthusiasm for America has waned for a portion of global travelers, there is still considerable interest and likelihood to visit among a subset of this global audience. So let's take a look at the contours of their ideal trip to the US to see what that reveals. Now, when it comes to days in market, international travelers still envision meaningful lengths of US trips, but our historical trends show that anticipated trip duration is shrinking. As shown in the table on the left, the average international traveler reported an ideal length of a US trip at an average of 12.3 days across 4.4 destinations within the country, which amounts to an average of 2.9 days in each destination. Now, this is a slight decrease on both accounts. So it's down 1.7 days in total length of stay, and it's down zero point 0.2 destinations compared to our measurement in 2025. And we found that Colombia, Argentina, India, and Australia reported the longest ideal lengths of stay, averaging 2 weeks or more, while Colombia, Argentina, and China report that they would spend the most time in each US destination, averaging about 3.5 days in each. And in terms of markets that reported the highest number of days available for international travel in the next year, but a relatively low number of days that they said that they would spend on their ideal US trip, Spain and the UK and Canada top the list of the biggest markets of opportunity for conversion for the US. And importantly, before you get discouraged, let information be your power. In terms of the brand and product attributes US travel brands and destinations can really lean into, know that retail, theme parks, food experiences, and atmosphere continue to drive US appeal amongst interested travelers. And because the US brand has resilience, and as I just shared, there are plentiful brand levers that we can pull, as well as tactical levers to rebuild intent, including the upcoming mega events that we are hosting in 2026 and beyond, including the FIFA World Cup, America 250, and the Route 66 anniversary. So let's take a look at sentiment and metrics around these particular events. Now, interest for FIFA World Cup among global audiences, it is resilient despite broader declines in U.S. travel intent. So, at nearly half, 46.6%, of global travelers express interest in visiting the U.S. specifically to attend FIFA World Cup events. That has dropped year over year by a marginal 4.2 points compared to 2025, but notably, interest in traveling to the US for this particular event has been significantly less negatively impacted compared to general interest in visiting this country, which, for comparison, that is down 21.1 points year over year, indicating that this could be a tentpole event for the US in terms of attracting inbound travelers in 2026. Interest in visiting the US for the World Cup is highest in India, Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, and China. Now, Latin American and European markets report the longest likely lengths of stay for a FIFA World Cup trip to the US. International travelers from Mexico reporting 19.8 days, Netherlands at 18.1 days, and Colombia at 17 days. They and Argentina as well, 15.2 days. They would spend more than 2 weeks in the US for a trip specifically to attend the World Cup. But in terms of how they would split these days up among different US destinations, the Netherlands and China would spend the most time in each US destination should they visit for this marquee event. As for America 250, considering how young our nation is relative to the rest of the world, there is low global awareness of this event, but that signals an opportunity to build interest. As shown on the chart on left, only only 3 in 10 overall international travelers were aware of these celebrations, suggesting strong opportunity to showcase the unique and once in a lifetime travel experiences that will be on offer for America's 250th anniversary. By market, awareness of America 250 is highest amongst travelers in India, China, Brazil, Canada, Mexico, and the UK. Interest in traveling to the US for America 250 is mixed, with its draw highest in India and China, but a bit more limited in Europe and Canadian markets. And Route 66, though, enjoys strong global awareness, especially in Europe, but familiarity is lower in East Asian markets. And as you can see on the chart on left, there a clear majority, 63.1% of overall international travelers are familiar with the historical route. And turning your attention to the chart at right, we see that awareness for Route 66's anniversary is highest amongst travelers in the Netherlands, France, Spain, and the UK. That said, travel for Route 66 holds stronger interest amongst Asian and LATAM markets, but weaker appeal for European markets despite their higher awareness. But among the individual markets, interest for visiting the US to celebrate Route 66's anniversary was highest in India, China, and Brazil. Notably, the markets with the highest awareness of Route 66 performed relatively poorest for actual interest in visiting the US for this celebration, and that is with the Netherlands. 81% are aware of the event, only 25.4% are interested in actually visiting to celebrate the anniversary. And unlike the FIFA World Cup, interest in visiting the 2028 Olympics, it actually lags this year, echoing broader declines in US travel intent. While just over 51.4% of international travelers expressed interest in visiting the US for the Olympics in 2028, when we took a measurement in 2025, this has dropped 8.6 percentage points to 42.8% this year. There is, of course, still time to generate more gains in interest, especially in the wake of the recent Winter Olympics. But among the individual markets, interest in visiting the US for the Summer Olympics in LA is highest for travelers in India, China, Brazil, but lowest for the Netherlands, Australia, and Canada. All right, let's now dive into some findings on travel trends and trip planning behaviors that will help you market to international travelers. And just a reminder that it's retail, theme parks, food experiences, and atmosphere that strongly drive US appeal amongst interested global travelers. And then rounding out the top 10 drivers for America are the US's iconic experiences, just overall being a bucket list destination, and our offerings around arts and culture. And this year, safety surpassed lodging information as the top most important information category that international travelers said that they would like to see when they are in the midst of deciding which US destination they want to visit. Restaurants and food followed closely at 29.5%, while activity related factors such as sightseeing, historical attractions, shopping, and national parks, they continue to comprise a secondary tier of important information, indicating that logistical components are still more significant than in market experiences for international travelers when they are in the decision making phase. As for the types of travel experiences that they are generally seeking out, an important proportion of international travelers are looking for locations, that is, longer trips spent in a single destination, as well as luxury travel. Over 4 in 10 overall international travelers agree that they are likely to take a staycation in the next year, and this is led by travelers in Brazil, India, and China. And a similar 38.9% of the total aggregate global traveler audience that we surveyed agreed that luxury experiences are important to their leisure trips, and this is also led by India and China. And when it comes to working while on vacation, just over 1 in 4 international travelers agree that they often bring work with them on holiday, with India posting the only majority, 52.9% of travelers in that market saying they bring work with them when they travel. All right, and an interesting finding, but perhaps not surprising, is that AI tools emerged as the only growing travel planning resource across all global markets that we surveyed. That said, online search, OTAs, word of mouth, online content, and social media still lead as the top planning resources that global audiences will turn to plan their international trips. And while AI use is hitting the mainstream, international trip planning usage of social media has shown some signs of eroding for most markets. Of overall international travelers, 28.7% report turning to social media to help them plan their international travels, and this is led by India, China, and Brazil. However, the role of social media in international trip planning appears to be slipping. The countries with the most notable declines in social media usage for international trip planning were led by Mexico, dropping 11.1 percentage points. Now, among those who use social media for international trip planning, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook continue to be the top channels. And official DMO content remains a trusted trip planning resource for international travelers, with strongest usage in Latin America and Asian markets. Digital content from DMOs continue to be an important resource. 25.8% of the aggregate saying they would use a DMO's website, and 15.8% saying they would use a DMO social media for trip planning purposes. Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, China, and India are the markets with the largest share of those who would turn to DMO websites as a planning resource. And then the top markets that would use DMO social media content are China, India, Colombia, and Argentina. And then as for desired tones in travel ads targeting them, friendly, positive, relaxing messages are still the most desired ad messaging tones, though there are key preferences that pop up and do vary by market. So, in summary, yes, the US brand has slipped on the global stage for many reasons, but so much of our product, culture, and people still make the American travel experience a desirable one. And again, this is not a moment to retreat, but to invest strategically, communicate with intention, because it's a scenario in which we are competing harder than ever for international visitors. So, as you think about your global strategy for this year and beyond, remember that safety messaging is now paramount and emotional reassurance is needed to attract global audiences. The US has strong product recognition, and that is a great foundation to build upon. But in this environment, US destinations must still actively compete so we don't lose more market share. And if you need the State of the International Traveler findings, you can purchase the report today and gain access to the dashboard with a literal world of insights. You can scan the QR code to learn more. And as always, Future Partners is here to help. So, should you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our team. And that concludes all the data I'm going to be throwing at you for today's presentation. Megan, do we have any questions from the audience?
Thank you so much, Miha. We really appreciate it. Very, very insightful. Yeah, we have a couple. So I wanted to start by is this is a question that was posed. Is America 250 travel gaining popularity in India, Brazil, and China because of destination marketing efforts? Or is there already strong interest in visiting the US, independent of any other major events?
Yeah, that's a great question. although we didn't ask a question specific around what's driving, their interest, whether it's just general interest in the US or because of marketing efforts, but I would, imagine marketing efforts, as we all know, working in this industry, they do move the needle. Um, America 250 has really done a great job with, partnerships with global entities. I saw advertising, during an NBA game, during the Super Bowl, that no doubt is, growing awareness for this mega event for the US. And, India in particular has shown a great affinity for US culture. That has to be a big part of why they want to come to the US. This being a marquee event for the country, no doubt just adds to their desire to come here.
Wonderful. That actually relayed well because it was kind of a two-part question, and this person also had said, somehow I find it unusual that many prospective travelers in India have heard about America 250, but you just shared kind of the sentiment behind that. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. Another question that was posed. Hold on, let me pull my sheet of wonders. Woohoo! The best opportunity markets for the US right now. What would you say?
Yeah, based on the data, I'd say, and based on other macro trends, we've seen that Asia is really driving the surge in international outbound trips. And from our data, both India and China pose really great opportunity markets for the US. Now, interestingly, when I look on the market level, China is one of the few markets that show a net positive gain in terms of perceptions of the US from 2025 to now, which is interesting. I don't know if that's driven by how their state media may be portraying America and this administration, but with their increased international trip spending, that provides a very great opportunity for the US. Now, there are still headwinds in that market. I read recently that the China state media was deterring people from coming to the US, citing really aggressive border patrol questioning of some of their residents. Now, will that have a dampening effect in their interest to come to the US? Potentially, but based off of our read in January, I'd say India and China would be the two best markets for us to go after in the current environment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Well, as Miha said, let's keep this conversation going, the different social media outlets. Thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate it.